I'm going to be showing how to use Distress Crayons for putting mortar into the cracks in laser cut wood. These are Distress Crayons. You can buy them in a package with neutral colors, or you can buy them separately. I'm going to be using a couple of yellow colors today. I'll be replicating a sand-based mortar, but you can also use white or gray crayons if you want. You can do a couple things with it. You can make the mortar look fairly new and even, or if you want to have an older building, you can have it look like it's cracking and coming out of the joints. One of the things I've found about brick patterns being laser cut into wood is the joints can sometimes be much narrower than they are in cast plastic. And often, if I try to use one of my washes that I use on plastic, if it's thin enough to go into the joints, it doesn't have enough pigment in it to really show. The nice thing about the Distress Crayons is you're using a lot of pigment, and then when you wash it, it can go into the joints. The other things we'll be using are a brush, preferably one with stiff bristles, and water and a rag. This is what the laser cut brick pattern looks like before anything's done to it. You can see they're very thin lines cut in there. They really need something that's easy to flow into those, but still stands out. This is what the laser cut brick wall looks like when it's been painted before the Distress Crayon is used to fill in the mortar. This was painted with a gray primer and then airbrushed with Vallejo light rust. I'll be using my Distress Crayon. This color is antique linen. It'll give me the look of a sand mortar. The first step I do is just put the crayon on the brickwork and start covering it. The crayon itself is a water-reactive pigment. It's not going on like an oil or a regular wax crayon, but you want to cover all of the area where you want mortar in the brick. You can see how I'm doing that. These Distress Crayons are fairly new on the market. The oldest reference I could find to them was going back to 2016. As you can see, some of the crayon comes off in big clunks. I try and pick that back up with my crayon and put it back in place so I don't waste quite as much. The crayons aren't expensive, but they are sometimes hard to find separately in the color you want. So that's how it looks covered with the Distress Crayon. And for the next step, it's where I use the water to get it to run into all the little crevices, and then wipe it off the surface with a rag. Just use my brush, dip it in the water I have here, and start going over the area in a circular motion. Try and fill all the little cracks of the mortar with the Distress Crayon. It tends to flow into the cracks fairly easily. And for this station I'm building, I want the brick to look in fairly good shape. So I'm trying to fill them all. And I'll take my rag and wipe it like that. That gets it off the top surface, and it also keeps the water from setting on it for too long. And you can see the effect of how it comes out. One of the nice things about these crayons, they don't dry as you put them on, so you don't have to hurry in your working it in. The only thing I try to keep track of is not letting the water sit on my laser cut wood for too long. They tend to like to warp all by themselves, and I don't want to give them any help. And that's how it's coming along. You can see in the areas right there, I didn't quite get it in all the cracks. I can go back and try and push some back in there from here. These distress cans give you a lot of flexibility in working with them. So let me wipe it dry now. And you can see it's filled in most of the mortar lines that were laser cut in the wood. You could leave it like that for an older building, or if you wanted really fairly new looking brick, you can go back and just push a little bit of the mortar into those crevices that didn't get any filled in. And it's almost done now. I'll probably go back in and fill a couple little spots. Some of the crayon builds up in corners. Once I've let it dry, I can take care of that. The wood is mostly dry from having wiped it off, but I do like to take it and let it completely dry with some weights on it, just so as all that water that I put in there evaporates, it doesn't warp any. And we'll come back and look at it in a little bit. And let's take a look at it now. All the water should have evaporated. And that's how it's come out. After everything's dry, there might be a little bit of the crayon left in some slots or the window frame areas that you might need to clean out. It doesn't dry hard, so it's easy to just get it out with a knife. Even a toothpick might work depending on the size that it's in. I've also used Distress Crayons for weathering some of my other models. These are just a couple of them for working on the floors. I would stain the wood and then use one of my gray or black Distress Crayons. Just put a little bit down and spread it around. Kind of blend it in. And I do the same with the roofs, where you just put a little bit down, spread it around with a wet finger or a wet brush, and then dry it off. These are all the walls that I have done so far on this build. It's nearing completion. I only have a couple left to go. But using the Distress Crayons and water makes it go very quickly, and you have a good deal of control over how it goes in and what it looks like. I'm quite pleased with the results.